The morning I saw Vanessa on TV, I nearly dropped my coffee. Her face filled the screen, all smiles and practiced charm, sitting across from a news anchor who introduced her as Austin's newest food tech disruptor. The cheer read, "Homegrown success, local entrepreneur launches revolutionary meal prep service." "The idea just came to me," Vanessa said, her voice smooth, confident. "I wanted to make healthy food easier for busy professionals. Organic, local, sustainable, meals that feel like home without the hassle." I stared in disbelief. She was describing my business. Word for word. The exact concept I'd been developing for the past 2 years. The pitch deck I'd shared with her last Christmas, excited, hopeful, craving support. I'd walked her through the subscription model, the ingredient partnerships, even the reusable packaging system. And now, there she was, sitting under bright studio lights, building a brand off the bones of what I built in silence. My phone buzzed with texts. "So proud of you. Wait, is this your company? Just saw Vanessa on KTX News. Looks amazing. Congrats." I didn't reply. I closed my laptop and walked to the filing cabinet in the corner of my home office. Bottom drawer, left side. A thick folder labeled Family Trust. I pulled it out with trembling hands. Because 3 months earlier, I'd discovered something just as stunning. My savings account had been emptied. $47,000. Gone. And when the bank confirmed the withdrawal had used my password and passed every security question, I'd known exactly who it was. "Vanessa." She cried when I confronted her. Said it was an emergency. That she'd pay me back. Now I knew what the emergency was. And what she didn't know was that she'd signed a contract 5 years ago that would change everything. I wasn't just the sister she stole from. I was now her business partner. Whether she liked it or not. I've always been the planner in our family. The one with spreadsheets, color-coded calendars, and 6-month goals written on dry erase boards. Growing up, I was the responsible one, while Vanessa chased whims like butterflies. New hobbies, new cities, new men. She burned bright and fast, while I kept the lights on. That's not to say I didn't love her. I did. I do. But loving Vanessa has always meant learning how to manage disappointment, and then forgive it. When our parents passed away 5 years ago, the grief didn't hit us the same way. I dove into logistics, life insurance, estate settlement, funeral planning. Vanessa crumbled, floated, vanished for weeks. When she finally came home, she was raw. Needy. And for once, ready to sit down and do the hard stuff. Together, we signed the Rodriguez Family Trust. Our parents had left behind a decent policy, just under $100,000 split between us. The estate lawyer, Marcus Delgado, had insisted we include one clause: any business venture funded by trust-derived assets must include equal ownership or profit sharing, unless expressly waived in writing. At the time, it felt unnecessary. We were family. We weren't thinking about businesses, we were just trying to survive the loss. We signed, we hugged, we moved on. In the years that followed, I focused on my career, product design for a local wellness brand, while quietly building something on the side. A meal prep subscription service tailored to busy professionals like me. Meals made with locally sourced ingredients, customizable options, compostable packaging, and streamlined delivery. I called it Nourish Well. The domain was mine, the logo hand-designed, the branding crisp and minimal. I had suppliers lined up. The business plan was airtight. Last Christmas, over tamales and wine, I shared it with Vanessa. I showed her the deck on my laptop, watched her eyes light up. "This is genius," she said. "You're going to kill it." I laughed. "One day. I'm just waiting for the right funding window. I've been saving up." She leaned over and squeezed my hand. "Let me know when you launch. I'll post about it everywhere." That moment stuck with me for weeks. It had felt like one of those rare, real sister moments, no drama, no jealousy, just support. Which made what came next all the more brutal. 3 months later, I opened my banking app and froze. $47,000. Gone. The entire savings I'd quietly built to launch Nourishwell. I thought it was fraud. I called the bank in a panic. They confirmed it was a verified internal transfer from a known device, using my personal credentials. No signs of hacking. No unusual IP addresses. The kicker? They'd passed the two-step security, questions only family would know. My first pet's name. My high school mascot. The street we grew up on. There was only one possibility. When I confronted Vanessa, she burst into tears. I didn't steal it, she sobbed. I borrowed it. I had this financial situation, just for a few weeks. I didn't know how to ask. I panicked. I wanted to scream. But instead, I made her sign a repayment agreement. Nothing formal. Nothing notarized. Just a written promise to pay me back monthly. I didn't want to press charges. I didn't want to destroy our relationship. But now, watching her on television, polished, successful, claiming my words, my systems, my vision, I realized something horrifying. She hadn't just borrowed the money. She had built my business. With my idea. And my savings. But what she'd forgotten was that 5 years ago, she'd signed something, too. The first time Vanessa missed a repayment, I told myself it was just an oversight. She'd Venmo'd me $300 that first month, and then nothing the next. I texted her, lightly. No pressure. She responded 2 days later with a sad face emoji and "so sorry, sis, cash flow's tight. Next month for sure." I let it go. Because that's what I'd always done. But then the third month came and went with no payment, no excuse, no contact. She stopped responding to texts altogether. I called, straight to voicemail. I emailed, no reply. I knew what that silence meant. I'd heard it before, in smaller ways. Broken promises. Missed birthdays. Late arrivals that turned into full-on disappearances. But this was different. This wasn't about being flaky. This was about betrayal. About theft. And yet, I still hadn't put it all together, not until that morning in March, when I turned on the news for background noise and heard the words "Fresh Start Meals" come from my television speakers. I looked up just in time to see Vanessa, hair styled in soft curls, wearing a pastel blazer I'd never seen before, smiling like a woman who hadn't stolen anything in her life. She was describing my brand. My concept. Almost word for word from the pitch deck I'd spent months agonizing over. The subscription tiers. The pre-portioned recipes. Even the tagline, "Real food. Real life. Fresh start." I blinked. My hands began to tremble. The realization didn't hit me like a slap. It hit me like cold water, slowly soaking through everything. All those missed repayments, the silence, the sidestepping, because she hadn't been scrambling to get back on her feet. She'd been building. With my blueprint. I spent the next hour digging. I opened every file, every email, every scrap of digital evidence I had from the last 2 years. My original business plan. Logo drafts. Recipe prototypes. Vendor lists. Domain receipts. Timelines. I found the message I'd sent her on December 26, 11:13 p.m. "Hey, wanted to send you the full deck from the concept I showed you. Would love your feedback. Attached, nourishwell_pitchdeck_final.pdf. She'd opened it 20 minutes later. I checked the file's version history. 2 weeks later, she had registered her LLC. Same meal structure. Slightly tweaked name. Different color palette, but unmistakably built on my foundation. I couldn't breathe. And worse? I couldn't believe I'd let it happen. I'm not naive. I don't live with my head in the clouds. But I'd wanted so badly to believe the best in her. To believe that this time would be different. That our past, her unpredictability, her inability to follow through, was just immaturity, not character. But now I knew better. Vanessa hadn't just borrowed my money. She'd studied my work, copied it, erased my name, and then launched it into the world under her own. I closed my laptop slowly, like it might explode if I moved too fast. Then I walked across the room, opened the filing cabinet, and pulled out the family trust agreement we'd signed 5 years ago. I remembered that day clearly, us in Marcus Delgado's office, the smell of old books and citrus-scented cleaning spray, the quiet weight of grief still sitting on both our shoulders. We'd signed those papers with trembling hands, promising we'd always do right by each other. That the money left to us would be shared fairly, protected, respected. I flipped to Section 12B. Any business venture initiated with funds from shared family assets shall be subject to equitable ownership between both parties unless legally waived in writing. My breath steadied. The $47,000 wasn't just my savings. It was part of the life insurance left by our parents, classified as family assets under the trust. Which meant Vanessa hadn't just used stolen money. She'd built her company on a legal foundation I had rights to. I didn't text her. I didn't call. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Marcus? It's Amber Rodriguez. I need to enforce Section 12B of the Rodriguez Family Trust. I paused, then added, and I need to do it fast. She just went on live television. The next morning, I met Marcus at his office. It hadn't changed in 5 years, same dark oak shelves, same abstract art that looked like it belonged in a silent courtroom. He greeted me with the same calm professionalism I remembered, but when I slid the folder across the table, bank statements, screenshots, the pitch deck, and a link to Vanessa's TV interview, his jaw actually tightened. She really launched this? He asked, scanning the documents. 2 days ago, I replied. And the entire business is built on funds that originated from the family trust. I checked the wire history. The $47,000 was pulled directly from the account labeled as inherited savings. And she signed this agreement, he said, holding up the original trust document. No waiver. No amendments. Section 12B is fully enforceable. Can we make it public? I asked. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You mean file publicly? I mean enforce it loudly. He smiled. It's rare I hear that from someone who's been wronged by family. I didn't smile back. That's because most people don't prepare for betrayal with documentation. He nodded and got to work. By the end of the day, Marcus had filed an official legal motion for equitable ownership based on the violation of Section 12B. We attached copies of the original trust, timestamps proving when Vanessa accessed my pitch deck, and a detailed financial report of the withdrawn funds. We also hired a licensed business valuation expert to assess the estimated market value of Fresh Start meals. Preliminary numbers were promising. Vanessa had done a lot with the launch, admittedly, but most of the operational DNA traced back to my original design. By law, if she used family assets to fund the launch, and she did, I had claimed to at least 50% ownership unless I'd signed it away. But I hadn't. In fact, I'd preserved it. And now, I had something better than an apology or repayment. I had leverage. I told Marcus I wanted the paperwork ready before the grand opening event, an over-the-top launch party Vanessa had announced across every social channel. We show up, I said, at the door. No drama. Just paperwork. He looked at me over his reading glasses. You want to ruin her party? No, I said. I want to walk in and remind her that everything she built on a lie, now legally belongs to me. Marcus leaned back and smiled. Now that's the kind of client I like working with. In the days leading up to the launch, I watched as Fresh Start meals exploded across Austin's digital scene. Press interviews. Sponsored reels. A time-lapse of Vanessa overseeing food tastings with hashtags like #FounderLife and #FromDreamToReality. Every photo made me sick. Every quote about starting from nothing made my jaw clench. But I waited. Quiet. Steady. And while Vanessa was chasing attention, I was filing injunctions, submitting ownership claims, preparing a list of operational corrections I'd implement once I assumed my rightful place in the company. I didn't want revenge. I wanted structure. Correction. Accountability. I wanted her to understand what it feels like to smile on the outside while your stomach knots under the weight of something you can't control. And soon, she would. Because the day of the grand opening was coming. And this time I wasn't showing up as her sister. I was showing up as the legal majority owner of the company she thought she stole. The morning of the launch was almost offensively beautiful. Bright Austin sun, blue sky, not a cloud in sight. Outside the newly painted storefront of Fresh Start Meals, staff were setting up string lights and floral displays around a sleek black and gold grand opening banner. Someone wheeled out a cart of champagne flutes while local reporters positioned their tripods by the red ribbon taped across the entrance. Vanessa stood near the front doors, radiant in a tailored white pantsuit, her hair styled in loose waves, arms folded confidently as she gave direction. She was glowing, like someone who believed, for the first time in her life, that the spotlight had found her for all the right reasons. She didn't know the storm was already behind her. I arrived at 11:58 a.m., exactly 2 minutes before the ribbon cutting. I wasn't alone. Marcus Delgado walked beside me, legal file in one hand, a quiet smirk on his face. Behind us, the business valuation officer we'd hired carried a black leather briefcase and a folded clipboard with our court order clipped neatly on top. We didn't need to say a word. People turned as we stepped up to the storefront. A few reporters looked confused. One photographer raised his camera out of instinct. Vanessa spotted me immediately, and the moment her eyes met mine, I saw the color drain from her face. She knew. Her voice cracked slightly as she said, "Amber, what are you doing here?" I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I stepped forward and placed the envelope in her hand. "Official court order," I said, calm as ever. "Filed under Section 12B of the Rodriguez Family Trust." She didn't open it at first, just stared down at the thick packet as if it might catch fire. Marcus cleared his throat gently. "As of this morning," he said, "Ms. Rodriguez holds a 51% controlling interest in this business." Vanessa's voice rose, shaky. "But I built this. This was my work. I did everything." I nodded. "Using my business plan, with my savings, which were drawn directly from inherited family funds. You remember the trust agreement, don't you? You signed it." She opened the packet with trembling fingers, flipping through the copies, the pitch deck she'd opened on her laptop. The bank transfer logs. The contract with her signature. I leaned in slightly, voice low. "You can keep the brand, Vanessa. The storefront. The staff. I'm not here to dismantle it." She blinked rapidly, already spiraling. "But you have two options," I continued. "You can buy me out at full market value as assessed by the court. Or I step in today as your legal majority partner." "But she started, then stopped herself. Around us, people were whispering. One of the reporters looked ready to ask a question. The champagne cart froze mid-roll. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "I didn't think you'd enforce it." I looked her straight in the eye. "That's because you mistook silence for weakness." A beat of silence passed between us. Then I turned to the business evaluator and nodded. He began reviewing the storefront layout, asking a manager for back-office access. Marcus handed copies of the court order to the front staff. A junior PR rep tried to stop him and then stepped back quickly when he flashed his credentials. Vanessa stood frozen, still holding the envelope. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "No," I replied. "You didn't have to. The ribbon was never cut." Instead, a small sign was placed on the door. "Grand opening delayed, internal operations review in progress." By sunset, the #FreshStart hashtag on Instagram had a new flavor, confused whispers, half-informed captions, blurry snapshots of me stepping through the front doors with a court order in hand. Vanessa tried to post a statement that night, something vague about a temporary restructuring. But the truth was already out. She didn't just steal my money. She built her empire on a contract she didn't bother to reread. And that contract? Was mine. The following week was chaos, for Vanessa, anyway. For me, it was order. Long overdue, deeply satisfying, and meticulously documented order. After the grand opening collapse, Vanessa tried to regroup. She called me twice the next morning, left a voicemail that started angry, turned pleading, and ended with her crying. I didn't call back. Marcus handled all communication. Calm. Unemotional. Efficient. Your client has two options, he repeated, again and again. Either buy out Ms. Rodriguez's 51% stake at full appraised value, currently estimated at $312,000, or accept her as controlling partner. There is no third option. Vanessa stalled for 3 days. On day 4, she tried to renegotiate, offered me 10% equity, said the money was more like a loan. Marcus responded by forwarding her the original trust agreement, signed in her handwriting, with a sticky note labeled page 6, section 12B. On day 6, she folded. At exactly 9 a.m. on Monday, I walked into the conference room of Fresh Start Meals with a leather-bound notebook and a plan. Vanessa was already there, no makeup, eyes puffy, hands clasped tight in her lap. She didn't stand when I entered. She barely looked up. The room smelled like citrus cleaner and desperation. I took my seat at the head of the table. Thank you for choosing partnership, I said simply. She let out a shaky breath. You're really going to run this company now? I already do, I replied. Legally. Financially. Strategically. You'll still be involved, but from now on, you execute. I lead. She looked like she wanted to argue. But the court order had already been signed, notarized, and filed. Marcus began distributing transition documents, updated titles, equity restructuring, the new management structure. Vanessa was now Chief Marketing Officer. I was Chief Executive Officer and majority shareholder. In the weeks that followed, I overhauled the operation. I restructured vendor contracts, fixed glaring issues in logistics, and rebranded the service tiers using the original NourishWell framework. I brought in a food operations consultant. I reinstated a local supplier Vanessa had dropped for a cheaper alternative, one that had led to customer complaints about freshness. I updated the packaging to compostable materials, just like I'd planned from the beginning. And the customers? They noticed. Retention went up. So did subscription rates. People didn't care who had started the company. They cared that their meals were on time, tasted fresh, and were made with intention. Meanwhile, Vanessa faded into the background. She showed up to meetings late, spoke less, and posted nothing on her personal channels. The #FreshStartFounder hashtag quietly disappeared. There was no need for me to drag her publicly. I didn't need revenge through humiliation. I had the one thing she thought I didn't. Control. One afternoon, a new intern asked how I'd come to own the company. I smiled and said, it's a long story. Let's just say I filed before she launched. And that was the truth. Vanessa thought ambition could replace integrity. She thought being bold meant she didn't have to be careful. She forgot that when you build something on someone else's ground, the foundation will always belong to them. Now? She worked for me. Under a name I created. Following a vision I had built. And the real irony? I still would have shared it all with her, if only she'd asked. It's been 8 months since I walked through the doors of Fresh Start Meals, not as a victim, not as a sister, but as its rightful owner. People ask me if I'm proud of what we've built, and I always hesitate, not because I'm unsure, but because the word "we" is complicated. The company is thriving. Subscriptions are up 42%, we've expanded delivery into 2 new cities, and last quarter, We turned our first real profit. Investors are circling. A health food chain in Houston asked about a partnership. I even got invited to speak at a local women in business panel last month. When I stepped onto that stage, holding the mic with steady hands, I realized, I belong here. Not because I took something back, but because I built it from the start. Vanessa still works here. We speak in polite sentences. There are no screaming matches. No dramatic showdowns. Just spreadsheets, timelines, and distance. I kept her title, Chief Marketing Officer, but stripped most of her authority. Her ideas are filtered through the team, voted on, revised. She knows better than to go rogue again. And I know better than to trust without contracts, clauses, and fallback plans. We haven't had dinner together since before the launch. I don't think we ever will again. Sometimes, I miss the version of us that existed when we were kids, back when we built forts out of couch cushions and Pinky promised not to tattle. But somewhere along the way, Vanessa learned how to charm people with borrowed words, while I learned how to protect what mattered with quiet diligence. She taught me something, though. Something I'll carry with me forever. Protect your vision before you share it. Last week, I had lunch with Marcus to sign off on a new vendor contract. As we wrapped up, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You know, I've seen a lot of messy family cases, but this one? This was surgical." I smiled. That's because it wasn't about destroying her. It was about restoring balance. He nodded. And now? Now, I said, she gets to live with the fact that she could have had it all, the easy way. I finished my coffee, tucked the signed papers into my bag, and walked out into the bright Austin sun. There's a plaque on my office wall now. Just a simple gold frame with 2 words engraved on cream paper. Section 12B. Most people think it's a startup motto or a project code. Only I know what it really means. It's not just a clause in a trust document. It's a reminder of why I have what I have. Why I stood calmly in front of a ribbon Vanessa never got to cut. Why I didn't raise my voice or post my story online. Because I didn't need likes. I needed leverage. And I had it. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. But I'd do it with even more clarity. I'd trust slower. I'd document earlier. I'd listen harder when silence starts to stretch too long between promises. And yes, I'd still build. Because that's who I am. I'm the planner. The quiet one. The one who files before she launches. The one who didn't steal, but still ended up in charge. Vanessa might have gotten the spotlight first. But I got the company. And more than that. I got to look her in the eye and remind her, without a word, that when you play with someone else's foundation, they can take back everything. Legally. Permanently. And without raising their voice. She thought I'd do nothing. She forgot I had documentation. And that's how I learned that the strongest form of protection isn't anger. It's being prepared. When someone takes from you, your work, your trust, your silence, you don't always need to fight with volume. Sometimes, you fight with the terms they forgot they signed. You move carefully, legally, and without warning. She thought I'd stay quiet. She thought I wouldn't notice. She thought being family made her untouchable. But what she missed was one clause. One document. One detail. And now she lives with the consequence, while I run the company I built. If you've ever had something stolen from you, ask yourself. What would you do differently if you knew it might happen again? For me, the answer is simple. I'd do exactly what I did. But next time, I'd file it even earlier. Have you ever had to take back something that was rightfully yours? I'd like to hear how you handled it, especially when it involved someone close to you. If this story stayed with you, there are more like it. You're welcome to stay for the next one. And if you know someone who trusts too easily, share this with them. They might need the reminder.